analysis. Those results will be reported in our supplementary draft report at the end of August, and then at the end of September we'll have the final report, which will integrate the broad discussion of the science, the costs of climate change to Australia, which we've got in the draft report, the conceptual material on the emissions trading scheme and other mitigation measures that we've got in the draft report as a result of the modelling, and bring that together in an assessment of what Australia will look like through the 21st century with unmitigated climate change if we do nothing about it, and if we take early steps as part of a global effort to deal with the problem. So that will be for the final report. The final report will also have extensive discussions of the adaptation challenge facing Australia. We're too late to avoid the costs of climate change. Unfortunately, we're too late to avoid substantial costs of climate change, and in the best of circumstances we will have to put a lot of effort into adaptation, into private efforts and government and policy efforts to reduce the impact of climate change. There are things that we can do, although if we have unmitigated climate change, if things get as bad as this majority science says they probably will, if we don't have effective global mitigation, we'll be abandoning life as we know it in significant parts of Australia, including the Murray-Darling. In the discussion of why Australia should do something, we should bear in mind that strong international mitigation is more strongly in Australia's interest than in the interest of any other developed country. I've already said that strong mitigation is more in South Australia's interest than in the interest of any other part of Australia, but it's more in Australia's interest than it is in the interest of any other developed country. And the draft report gives us 3 reasons for that. One reason is that we are already a hot and dry country, so that more warming and the drying of the southern latitudes of Australia that the majority science says is probable if there's no mitigation of climate change, will damage us more than small changes in temperature and rainfall would have in other parts of the world. There are some parts of the world in the northern latitudes of human settlement, countries that include Russia, Canada, maybe the northern strip of the United States, some countries in northern Western Europe. A bit of warming could be said to be helpful, though there are limits to that. But you can't say that about Australia. Australia's location means that we are more vulnerable to climate change than other developed countries. The second reason why we've got a stronger interest than other countries in successful international mitigation is that we, more than any other developed country, live in a region of developing countries, including vulnerable, fragile developing countries. And some of the impacts of, well, many of the impacts of climate change will be most severe in developing countries. They will, in general, be very severe in their effects in the hottest regions. That sea level rises will be more damaging across Asia, across the Indonesian archipelago, across the island of New Guinea and the South Pacific than in most parts of the world. Developing countries will be poorly equipped to manage these impacts. Rich economies with highly flexible market economies, and these days we can count ourselves amongst those, will be able to make the best of a bad situation better than fragile developing countries. And to the extent that countries in our immediate neighbourhood are seriously damaged, at worst destabilised by climate change. Their problems will become our problems to a proportionate extent that won't have parallels in other developed countries. And the third reason why we've got an especially strong interest in successful mitigation of climate change on a global level is that the structure of our economy means that our terms of trade are hurt more by the damage that climate change would do to developing countries than are the terms of trade of any other country. That comes out very clearly from the early results of our modelling, which are presented in the draft report. In the draft report, we give the first taste of the results of the joint modelling that our review team has done with the Commonwealth Treasury. For economists, I think it's pretty exciting modelling. For the rest of society, probably pretty dull. But what we've tried to do is establish a reference case that looks at what Australia would look like, the Australian economy would look like through the 21st century if there were no impacts from climate change or mitigation of climate change. That's a base case. That will be of interest in itself to some people. It says that our population will be about 47 million at the end of the 21st century. It says that our average incomes will be about 3 times as high in real terms as they are now. The amount of goods and services that we can purchase will be about 3 times as high. The economy will be about 700% larger than it is now. We then will use that base case to see how both climate change and the mitigation of climate change might affect that base case. We've got a chapter 2, that I hope people will take the trouble to study, in which we set out the various ways in which climate change will affect the welfare of Australians through the 21st century. We identify 4 categories of damage. One of these, and only one of these, is currently amenable to modelling in the standard ways. That's the market-related economic impacts for which we've got good data now. Economists are notorious for focusing on the things that can be measured and ignoring other things. Well, we're asking you not to only focus on the things that we measure. The second category is economic impacts working through market processes that are real but which we can't measure accurately at the moment. A third category is what we call the insurance costs of climate change. The science is quite clear about the risks. It's quite clear about most likely outcomes from unmitigated growth of greenhouse gases. There's a lot of uncertainty, and the outcome might be better than the central cases, or it might be much worse. And the worst ends of the probability distributions are catastrophic. Most Australians would be prepared to pay something to avoid the worst ends, the catastrophic ends. Our modelling is just based on middle-of-the-road outcomes. We need to think of the insurance value of mitigating climate change as a separate category of costs and benefits of mitigation. And finally, we shouldn't forget all of those things that we value which cannot be put through an economic model. And a lot of the economic modelling effects will miss out the effects on values that are very important to Australians, but which in their nature are not easily amenable to monetary calculation.